It's the debut episode of Cricket Classics, a show in which we walk down memory lane and relive a classic cricketing contest. And giving me company today in this very fun and
1
enjoyable
hour.
walk down memory lane is Shomi Shorkar, who is from the Bharat Army, Kunal Samant from the Bharat Army as well, and one of our usual suspects, Ayaz Memon, consulting editor here at One Play Sports. Guys, welcome to the show. So, a quick announcement to all our viewers that it's not just Cricket Classics' debut, it's also a debut for Shomi and Kunal on our One Play Sports networks. So good to have you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The pleasure is all ours.
Fantastic, fantastic. We have a lot to go over in today's show, as we have only about 35 to 40 minutes and a lot to cover, as we're going to be discussing the 2011 World Cup final that took place between India and Sri Lanka. So we can cut straight to the chase. I'll just give you a brief overview of some of the discussion points. We're going to be going over the key moments that took place in the match and getting people's opinions on the emotions and the feelings that they were going through while the game was going on.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ayaz, you being the senior statesman, let me come to you first. So the drama of the final actually began even before the first ball was bowled, as during the toss, Kumar Sangakkara's initial call was actually drowned out by the crowd. Quite the dramatic start to the World Cup, wasn't it?
Most unusual. I mean, everybody got bewildered, perplexed. And I remember I was sitting in the press box, and we didn't know what the hell was happening. Of course, word came to us. The communication came to us from the commentators, so to speak, from guys who are on the ground. And then we realized that, whatever had taken place. But it was the most unusual start to a final. Not something that you see often. In fact, I can't remember having seen it ever in a World Cup final.
Yeah.
But then it was Sri Lanka that ended up winning the toss, and Kumar Sangakkara elected to bat for Sri Lanka. Shomi, I'm going to come to you now. Zaheer Khan, of course, opened with a magnificent spell. I think he had three consecutive meetings in his first 3 overs, and then picked up the scalp of Upul Tharanga as well. And I think in his opening spell, he had 5 overs, 3 maidens, 6 for 1, right? Really set the tone for India initially. So I'm pretty sure he must have been happy with the opening exchanges.
Absolutely. And I think the way Zaheer had been playing all through that campaign, he has been literally, taking over the Indian bowling. I think I've listened to Suresh Raina later when he said that Zaheer was kind of captaining the bowling side when MSG and MSG and Sachin were not so much, giving interfering in his realm of things. So the way he was kind of taking the bowling all through, that was really, really magnificent. Plus, I think that was a very hot day in Mumbai, and starting off with the bowling, we all wanted to bat, and that was great. I think Sri Lanka was somewhere at 32 for 2, and they're setting in their first set of bit of tone was very, very good. So yeah, it was a good start.
Absolutely. As you said, solid start for Sri Lanka. I think there was 60 for 2 in the 17th over. So a pretty low run rate to early scalps. But Kunal, what happened towards the end? Because Mahela Jayawardene produced a magnificent innings. A lot of people called it a poetic innings as well. Classic Mahela, full of finesse as well as explosiveness, right? And then you had Thisara Perera, of course, playing the solid cameo, scoring 22 of 9. So towards the end, India sort of fell off the wagon?
I don't think so. I mean, it was Sri Lanka who outperformed us in the second half of the first innings. The way Mahela Jayawardene, he's absolutely a big match player, and no wonder he stepped up on the occasion. Just like in the second innings, Gambhir, Dhoni, and everyone stepped up, and that's the beauty of the final. I mean, the way they started off was pretty slow, but as soon as they realized if they have to win it, they have to play really well, and that's what they did. And no wonder they reached the finals. They were undoubtedly the second best side in the World Cup.
Ayaz, tell me something, as someone who's very well versed with statistics. At the end of the Sri Lankan innings, did you think that this could be a premonition for India? Because if I have to point out a couple of stats to you, each of the previous 5 centurions in finals had gone on to lift the trophy. Of course, Mahela scored a century in that innings. And in the previous 9 editions of the World Cup, before the 2011 World Cup, the team batting first had won the World Cup final on 7 out of 9 occasions. So were you paying attention to these fun facts, or not so fun facts, I should say, as an Indian fan?
Well, I mean, these were interesting stats, but you know that they need not always hold true. I think, look, India had certain distinct advantages. Playing at home, the home crowd matters a lot. Playing at the Wankhede, where some of their in fact, all of them have played a lot on the Wankhede Stadium. So, the pressure was always on the Sri Lankans, not so much on the Indians. The pressure on the Indians was greater on the pressure of expectation, not from the cricketing point of view. Obviously, being the home team, everybody wanted to see India win. 1 billion+ people kind of praying for you day in and day out while the tournament was being played. That can create enormous pressure, and it's credit to Dhoni and his team that they withstood that pressure so well. I remember, I mean, just to shift a little away from this final, I had gone to see the match at Mohali, India versus Pakistan. I mean, the tension was palpable in that match. The tension was far lesser in the final against Sri Lanka, in fact, except for the fact that this was a final. Either you win or you don't win the title. But I think that Jayawardene has been made. The point has been made. It was a classic knock. It was a knock of great finesse. Mahela Jayawardene was amongst the most beautiful batsmen in the world to watch when in full flow, and he made the match. He put up a respectable total for Sri Lanka to defend, and the fact that India's bowlers conceded a lot of runs towards the end. Remember, in ODI cricket, especially now in the last, maybe in this millennium, bowlers go for plenty towards the end, unless the pitch is spiteful or there's too much help for the bowlers. If it's a flat track, actually the bowlers will go for plenty. So Zaheer Khan's analysis towards the end got marred, because from 2 wickets for actually nothing to 2 wickets for quite a lot, might seem like he didn't bowl really well, but actually he gave India the first look at that they could win this match. Imagine if they had got off to a 100-run start or something, the total would have been in excess, maybe 60-70 runs more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just a reminder, viewers, Zaheer actually ended up going for 17 and 18 in his 9th and 10th overs, respectively. And Sri Lanka clobbered him for 63 in the batting power play, and then ended up posting 274 for 6. A quick word from all three of you before we talk about the Indian batting innings. Shomi, I'll start with you, then go to Kunal, then go to Ayaz. 274 for 6 on the board after Sri Lanka's batting. Did you think it was advantage India? Was it 50-50? What were you thinking then?
So if I could recall well, at that point of time, Sachin the whole buzz was around Sachin's 100. So it was all about, we were just thinking that Sachin is our hero. He will just come out and he's our savior. He will just take this through, and a fairy tale will be written, and we will just sail through. So honestly, at the end of the Sri Lankan innings, though 274 seemed a little high with respect to chasing in a World Cup final. But as a viewer, I don't remember myself or anybody around me really panicking because of the fact that, just sheer fact, Sachin and Sehwag is there and UV is in the form of his life. So we were pretty confident at that point of time. But yeah, we all know what happened after that, the panic that had set in. But then it was fine.
We'll get to Sachin and Sehwag, or the lack thereof, I should say. Kunal, you tell me about what feeling you had after Sri Lanka's 274 total.
I think it was, for a kid, I was probably in 7th standard. And for me, it was like, this is the real test. Like right now, this is a challenging total. Back then, I think 250 itself was a challenging total in ODI format of the game. And the moment I saw 274, it was actually challenging. But then if we are the best team in the tournament, we have to chase it down. And that's what we did.
So, Anubhav, I have a question here. If I may.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Kunal says he was in the 7th standard when he watched the match in 2011. So he can't be very old even now. How did you join the Bharat Army? At what age?
So me? Yeah. So actually, I have a YouTube channel, Cookie Way, and that's how Rakesh Patel, the founder of Bharat Army, got in touch with me. And I conducted some interviews for him. And then Cookie Way and Bharat Army both parallelly started growing. Like they crossed 1 lakh followers on Instagram. And we crossed around 1 lakh subscribers on YouTube at the same phase. Wow. So since then, we've been working together. Yeah.
And Tommy, are you?
No, I'm much elder to Kunal, and I think. I think I just met Rakesh, and Bharat Army anyways had a very strong presence with respect to the fan base. So yeah, I was always attracted towards the way they cheered for Team India in the stands. And then I coincidentally met Rakesh through a friend, and that's how I became a part of it. That's where I met Kunal also, and then since
Yeah.
then we have also kind of collaborated together,
So,
and we have a new YouTube channel on cricket. That's going
yeah.
kind of
Oh, fantastic.
okay. Yeah. So
Fantastic. So, I mean, do you
something
all travel
exciting.
with the team when the team goes, playing matches in India somewhere? Do you go out of
Uh,
Mumbai?
Yeah, so actually there's a few other people who are the part of the video team. So there's three of us. So we have been traveling to Kolkata for the first pink test. Then we were
Okay.
at Ranchi for the again the test match against Africa or someone, and we were at Pune as well. So we have been traveling lately, but home, yeah.
Yeah. So, Anubhav, take
And
over
one
now.
Fantastic.
fun fact,
Yeah, I mean that's
2011.
wonderful to hear.
yeah.
Honestly, a couple of announcements. Speaking of Rakesh, both Kunal and Shomi alluded to Rakesh. We actually have Rakesh Patel, who's the CEO and the founder of the Bharat Army, on
Oh,
Chatter Patar with Anubhav. That's a show that we do every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So this coming
Wow.
Tuesday, in about 4 or 5 days' time, we do have Rakesh for a very organic, conversational, candid one-on-one discussion. So our viewers should definitely tune in for that. And Kunal and Shomi, after the discussion is over, I'm going to contact you guys. I said, I can apply to the Bharat Army as well. Hopefully, you guys do not reject my application.
Sure. Yeah.
Lovely. Carrying on. Shomi, you spoke about Sachin and Sehwag, right? You said you
Yeah.
weren't tensed because you were expecting Sachin special. And I'm guessing, once Sehwag was out for naught, you must have thought that the stage is completely set for a Sachin special. He's gonna score a winning 100, an unbeaten 100, and India will cross the line. What happened at 31 for 2 after Sachin got out for 18?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a. I mean, I was watching this in college, so I was in IIT Kharagpur at that point of time studying, and we had a kind of a themed party kind of going on with the whole screening and everything going on there, and I remember there was like at least maybe 200 people in there, and there was absolute pin drop silence. Like we could hear like each other's breath, that kind of a silence when Sachin went off. Of course, I mean, we were all expecting Sachin to take us through and make that 100, and that was his ground. That was Wankhede. It was such a heartbreak and such a panic that had set in for those 15, 20 minutes before Kohli started going on. But yeah, I was. It just felt like there were flashbacks of 2003. It was like I was feeling we haven't come this far to stumble at this point. So something has to happen, and we need to move on. Like we need to get this. But yeah, it wasn't the best feeling. I mean, definitely not.
Absolutely. I think, as you said, the silence was absolutely deafening. And I think the biggest travesty was the fact that, Kunal, I think Sachin got off to a solid start, 18 of 12 balls, and he was looking sumptuous, like an
Right.
absolute, peak
Mhm.
Sachin. But then against the run of play, you could say, is when he got out to a Malinga delivery.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ayaz, coming to you now. So Tendulkar out, Kohli walks in. In hindsight,
Mhm.
do you think that was symbolic in many ways? Tendulkar passing on the baton to Virat Kohli.
in hindsight, certainly, yes, of course. And also for the fact that, Kohli has done so well for himself. I mean, if Kohli hadn't become the player he has, then, there's no question of passing the baton. We would have said, well, he was one of those who played in that final. And, there are so many players who are remembered in history by their association with either a key match or with a key partner in a key partnership or whatever else. But Kohli is, of course, being remembered for what he has achieved subsequently. He was a youngster then. He's become a great player
Yeah.
today. He's possibly the greatest batsman in the world today across formats. But getting back to the match, there were obviously, great trepidations, great apprehension when India lost Sachin and of course Sehwag, because these two guys have they are outstanding players, and Sachin had a wonderful tournament till then. The great thing
Yeah.
about Sachin, and I think we've discussed this earlier, is you look at his World Cup record. He's either finished a few times at the top in terms of run aggregate, or he's in the top three. So for somebody to do it over so many World Cups over so many years is quite a remarkable thing. And you come into a match, the final, this is possibly, I mean, not possibly, this is certainly your last World Cup innings that you're playing. Your form is good, the expectation is so high, and he's a big innings, big match player. That he's one guy who could never kind of buckle down or collapse because of the pressure. In fact, he thrived under pressure. He carried the pressure with him for 24 years. Pressure of expectation. For him to get out, what happens is if you're the opponent, if you're the Sri Lankan team, you actually feel that this match might be yours. You got Sehwag, but Sehwag lives a very risky life in any case, and then you got Sachin. And you sense that this could be our day, and for them to get thwarted from there by Kohli and Dhoni and Yuvraj and of course Gambhir. Don't forget Gambhir's role in this match was quite an astonishing performance by the Indian batting. I know this was a home match. India had done extremely well. Everybody thought and expected them to win, but to lose two batsmen and then chase down 274 in a high pressure game was quite an achievement.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But Ayaz, I'll put you on the spot right now. At 31 for 2, right? Sachin and Sehwag gone. You spoke about Sachin's contribution leading up to the final, but of course, in the final, he didn't quite come good, right? At 31 for 2, did you think the writing is on the wall?
Well, not really, because you can blame my white hair for that, because I've seen quite a few matches in my life. And India's track record had been very good, even before the World Cup and immediately after. The team had been really doing well. In all formats, actually. By 2010, we were the number one team in Test cricket. We were a damn good team in ODIs. So there was a lot of depth in the batting. I mean, Kohli was the youngest guy going around, but there was Gambhir, there was Yuvraj Singh, there was Dhoni himself. So there was a lot of depth in the batting. But I thought that what Sri Lanka had done by getting Sehwag and Sachin early is leveled out the match. It was no longer that match was tilting towards India. The match had become even Stevens, and it was then for India to win it from there, not for Sri Lanka to lose it. If we had got off to a great partnership at the start, then Sri Lanka would have been out of the game very early. That they remained in the game for as long as they did was because they got those 2 wickets early.
Absolutely. And look, a lot of people talk about Dhoni's innings, a lot of people talk about Gambhir's innings as well. But according to me, I still feel that Virat Kohli should also be getting a fair bit of credit. Walking in, replacing Tendulkar, India being 31 for 2, he's 22 years old. 22 years old. And granted, he didn't end up getting a 50, he didn't end up getting a big score, a score that's big on paper, but his 35 and his 83-run stand with Gambhir definitely stabilized the innings for India, right?
Yeah.
It
was absolutely crucial. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I also think we just, it was a fabulous cotton bowl into which Kohli got out. I mean, it just came out of nowhere. So, and the way he was actually playing that, taking those singles, and Gambhir was hitting a few fours and then kind of grounding it down. I think the way that partnership went, especially that left-right combination, from there we started kind of understanding. It was quite a solid middle. I mean, they were quite middling it quite in a solid way out there. So yeah, I mean, I think Kohli's and Gambhir's innings was one of the most key factor that took us home that day.
Absolutely. Kunal, you were saying something?
No, I was talking about the same thing. I mean, this Kohli's innings, I mean, on paper, as you said, looks really like 39 odd runs is not that big. But then when you look at the situation of that specific match, it was absolutely crucial. It was his World Cup debut. I mean, as in World Cup, this World Cup was his first World Cup. And playing in a big final where Sachin Tendulkar and Sehwag shows on you, it was absolutely beautiful to watch.
Absolutely. Ayaz, I'm going to ask you the next question, and once you've answered this,
Anubhav, I just need to add here. So what happens is if you lost two major players at the very start, you lost Sehwag and Sachin, you need stability. The innings need stability, and that's what Gambhir and Virat Kohli provided at that point in time. If you don't have stability, you try and say, show bravado and you lose another wicket or two at that point in time, the innings that you saw subsequently from Dhoni and from Yuvraj may never have materialized. And I'll take you back to a World Cup final. It's not featuring India, but it is featuring the West Indies in 1975. Now, much before any of you all were born. It was the first World Cup. West Indies versus Australia is the final. The West Indies are on the back foot because they've lost Greenidge, they've lost Fredericks, they've lost a young Viv Richards. And then you have Clive Lloyd and a 39-year-old Rohan Kanhai, who, kind of stabilized the innings. And then Lloyd makes a century and they build up a big total, which they defend subsequently. What I'm trying to say is that, now we are used to scores of 350, 360. 350 is now the new normal in a sense. Guys are making double hundreds in innings. But when you are 30 for 3 or 45 for 4, it's a very different ball game. And the people who then stabilize the innings must be given due credit. Because if that doesn't happen, the rest of the batting who succeeds may not be in a position to have played the kind of innings that they did.
Yep.
Absolutely. Certainly laid the foundation for that epic turnaround that took place. And then Kohli, of course, ends up getting out to a brilliant cotton bowl, as Shomi mentioned, of Tilak Dilshan scoring 35, but a very vital and crucial 35. And then out steps MS Dhoni, promoting himself to number 5. We actually found this graphic from the Bharat Army Instagram page, and it says MS Dhoni promotes himself in a big final. Define this move in one word. Kunal, I'll put you on the spot first.
Not sure about one word, but then he was there to make a statement. Maybe let's call it Captain's Knock. Yeah.
Captain's Knock. So hyphenated, right?
Yeah, hyphenated. So let's call it one word. Yeah. But then I think, so what had happened with Dhoni is many people say that he didn't have a great World Cup in terms of batting. But then what was happening is he was taking the pressure on himself and letting others bat. And if needed, if actually there's a need for Dhoni to step in, that's when he would come in. And that's because if whenever he did that, he didn't really get much time to bat. So he had to do what the team required at that specific moment, which is just go out and hit, which again faltered in terms of losing his wicket. Specific match, it was perfect for Dhoni because if Yuvraj Singh would have got out, there would have been tremendous pressure on the Indian batting lineup, which didn't happen. And Dhoni was there. Okay, if Dhoni goes out, that would have been fine because Yuvraj Singh is still in play. So there would have been less pressure on him. So that's why I think it was a brilliant, it was a masterstroke.
Show me your one word.
I would say gutsy because I think prior to that, Dhoni has never crossed a strike rate of, maybe in one or two matches, he had a strike rate of 100. Everywhere he had like a very, very low strike rate. And then to go in at that stage, pushing ahead of Yuvraj, who was absolutely in the form of his life, that required a lot of guts. It worked out well, great. If it wouldn't have worked out, imagine the flag that man would have got from Indian audience.
Yeah.
And taking that up was a very, very bold move. But as Kunal mentioned, we all felt that there was still a long way to go. So probably, they wanted to have Raina and UV back. Yeah. So that in case something happens, they can back it up. Also, I think it was important for them to have that left-right kind of a combination going because that was working well, and Sri Lankan bowlers were really at loss, how to work it out. So I think that was also something I believe was going on in the Indian dressing room, and that happened.
Certainly a high risk, high reward strategy, as you mentioned, and as Indian fans, we're glad that it paid dividends. I asked, how would you describe Dhoni's masterstroke?
Look, well, I would call it intuitive because one was obviously a very strong cricketing reason, which Chomi mentioned, that he wanted that right-left combination to continue. That right-left combination had stabilized the innings, as we know. So with Virat getting out, and if you send Yuvraj or Raina, then it's two left-handers. So I think that was a very well thought-out decision. The other was, for a large number of times, sport is about a strong gut. You get a good gut feeling. If you are a man with a strong gut, you will ride your risk on it, and you will take the consequences, or you will become a hero. So I think he sensed that the opportunity lay in how he played the spinners going out there, and if he could take them on early, if he could kind of stifle their, if their grip, which they might get on the game, then, and he's a very good runner between wickets. He's the kind of guy who would push into the gaps, take singles. Everybody remembers him for the six, for the winning six, but actually he played a lot of strokes which didn't reach the boundary, but which fetched India a lot of runs. And that's very crucial in understanding not just that innings of Dhoni, but the way Dhoni's played all his life. He's seen as this finisher, loads of runs towards the end, especially in T20 cricket. But he's, in my opinion, the most astute and adroit player in gaps that I've seen from India.
Yeah.
And the running between the wickets has been outstanding. I don't think we've had a better runner between wickets. I mean, maybe now Virat Kohli, and when the two of them, obviously, when they partnered later, were a great sight to watch. So I think all things considered, he kind of sussed out. He was obviously captain, and he's thinking in the dressing room, okay, if Gambhir gets out, who goes in? So it's Yuvraj or Raina. And if Virat gets out, who goes in at this point in match? And he decided to take charge of the situation while he was there.
Yeah.
Not that, Gambhir was not in good form, but as a captain, it's also, you can attribute all kinds of adjectives now. He took, he took charge of the situation. He showed a lot of guts. He was intuitive. He took a risk. You can use all these adjectives. They all apply. At the end of the day, it worked.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To add on to that, sir, I think also it was important for us at that point of time to see off Muralidharan because he was really a threat, and Dhoni had seen a lot of Murli. So I think that was also something that they might have thought that Dhoni can see off Murli pretty well.
See, one thing you must remember that Dhoni is a very unorthodox batsman. He's an unorthodox cricketer. Even his wicket keeping is unorthodox. But as a batsman, and remember, wicket keepers have damn good reflexes and eyesight. I mean, he was obviously almost 10 years younger then. So he was at his peak, I would say, in terms of, fitness, reflexes, everything. And he played spinners in a very unusual manner. I mean, he would use footwork and then he would go and defend. And he had the big shots. He had the ability to push into the gaps, run fast, hard singles and twos, and also hit the big shots, clear the field. And he had the muscle, the strength to do it. And anybody who plays big shots needs to have a good stomach. You have to have the risk-taking ability, because if you miscue, you can get out. So all these things are very defining characteristics of Dhoni as we know him, and as he subsequently showed in so many more matches in his career.
Absolutely. And now pivoting from Dhoni to Dhoni's partner in crime in that 109 run partnership, Gautam Gambhir. Look, like, I'm not sure if you guys feel the same way, but I sometimes feel that Gambhir doesn't quite get as much credit as he deserves, or perhaps Dhoni's heroics to some extent overshadow the contribution made by Gambhir, because I think Gambhir's contribution was as vital, if not more vital, than Dhoni's contribution. Do you think, do you perhaps, agree with that sentiment to some extent?
Absolutely. I mean, the Gambhir's contribution in the 2011 World Cup, even back in the 2007 T20 World Cup, that was also incredible. So he is a little unsung. I mean, he's not was as celebrated. Of course, the heroics that we as fans enjoy, especially with those sixers and everything, that's the kind of thing that we this generation enjoys. But yeah, I mean, but I think everybody understands as fans that what would have happened if Gambhir wouldn't have stabilized the innings there. And also, even if you look into this entire World Cup campaign, Gambhir had been quite good. So I think yeah, he has been incredible for India in that particular series.
Ayaz, I'm going to quickly ask you. I know Shomi spoke about Muralidharan, right? And seeing off Muralidharan. Sri Lanka weren't playing Ajanta Mendes and Rangana Herath in that final, right? Who were spectacular against England and against New Zealand as well, right? Do you think in hindsight that's going to come to haunt Sri Lanka? Do you think they regret not having played those two?
I mean, hindsight vision is 2020, isn't it? I mean, everybody has a perfect answer when you look back to how things should have been done and couldn't have been done, etc., etc. But the fact is that, Indians are better players of spin bowling than the English batsmen would be. And that was the biggest fear of the Sri Lankans, that we pack our side with spinners and we might get mauled by the likes of Dhoni, Yuvraj, even Gambhir, Sehwag, Sachin. I mean, imagine the batting lineup And Ajanta Mendes actually, barring one season in 2008, I would imagine, when he made his debut, he didn't hold any terrors for the Indian batting subsequently. They just sorted him out. So I don't
Right.
think
Right.
that was such a bad call by the Sri Lankans. It's just that the Indians played extremely well. I just want to add the point. You raised an interesting question. There's been so much debate about it and controversy about whether Gambhir got enough attention or recognition or credit or not. So, look, if you talk in terms of quantitative analysis, you'll say, oh, there were 100 articles on Dhoni and maybe 10 on Gambhir. So therefore, it's a mismatch and it's unfair and all that. But I don't think these things are measured like that. So I'll give you an example from the 1983 World Cup, okay, which India won again. So what do you remember most of the final? What is the one thing which stands out for us in that final, which India beat West Indies?
Kapil Dev.
Kapil Dev's
yeah,
catch,
Yeah,
right?
lifting that
Kapil
trophy.
Dev's
Yeah.
catch, which he took with Richards, and was the turning point of the match, right?
yeah,
Everybody talked about it, and it's been shown like zillions of times on footage.
yeah.
Do you know who was the man of the match in that final?
Yeah.
Not really.
See, struggling. It is Mohinder Amarnath.
Mohinder Amarnath.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mohinder Amarnath was also the man of the match in the semi-final.
Oh,
So he won back-to-back man of the match awards in the semis, in the final. And how many people talk about Mohinder Amarnath today when we talk about the 1983 World Cup win? Everybody talks of Kapil Dev's 175, Kapil Dev's catch in the final to dismiss Viv Richards, and Kapil's Devils. Everything is Kapil Dev, Kapil Dev, Kapil Dev. So what I'm saying is, A, there is a star value of a player, and then there are certain things which get etched in memory, like Dhoni's six.
yeah,
The way he finished the match, because that was the climax. That's when
yeah,
every Indian's heart erupted with joy,
yeah.
because that became symbolic of, everybody felt that we have achieved this victory. That's how Indians love their cricket.
Mhm.
It's not to
Yeah,
kind of diminish Gambhir's contribution, because there is no exact measure for that. You know what I'm saying? So that's the way I see it.
And speaking of the victory, I'm going to ask each of you this question. Kunal, we can start with you. What do you think the victory was symbolic of? Of course, winning the World
yeah.
Cup after 28 years, right? 28 years between 83 and 2011. What do you think that victory was symbolic of?
I think the main thing was that Indian cricket is about to change. I mean, I think to some extent Dada was the one who brought in the change, a transition. John Wright as well. He also gets the credit for that. And then I think in 2011, the way Team India was performing when Dhoni took over, it was like a champion team. I remember one incident when Rohit Sharma recently told that they were winning against Australia, and it was an easy win. And Rohit Sharma was on the crease, and suddenly Dhoni had sent a guy to drop a message to him that do not celebrate after the win. Now that itself is a sign that you are actually not just winning the game, you're mentally winning as well. Because if Team India would have celebrated the win, it would have been like an upset. Like, okay, Bangladesh defeats India at times. That's not a big thing for that. But the way so these little changes were quite visible back in 2010 and all during the Asia Cup. We had left at the 2010 Asia Cup. And so same way, I think it was symbolic of Team India's dominance, which was about to begin in terms of ICC tournaments.
And Shomi, I'll ask you the same question.
I think for me, in this particular World Cup, overall, the happiest moment was in the quarterfinals when India beat Australia. That is kind of the most symbolic thing for me. Again, with respect to India's dominance, I mean, Australia has been hovering over our minds. I mean, ever since I've started watching cricket. I mean, I remember watching '96 World Cup, '96, 2003, 2007. Every time 99, every time Australia was there in the finals, and so they were kind of not only dominating the field, they were kind of dominating really our minds. And then to come to a point where Australia has to exit the World Cup, and we made them exit. I mean, that was a feeling of immense joy for me. I mean, personally, that was bigger than a World Cup victory, bigger than the India-Pakistan game for me personally. And I think that's where it kind of symbolized, dominance, and that's where it symbolizes a change of a change of era for me. So
I kind of agree with Shomi on this one because as a kid, I didn't really care much about the India-Pakistan rivalry or anything. I wanted to live the cup. So many people, especially elders, were like, "You forget the finals, win against Pakistan and everything." For me, that was not the case. I knew if we have to live the cup, it's the Aussies that we have to beat. They've been holding the trophy for a long time, and they are the champion side. I mean, even in the 2019 Cup, you saw the way they were not really performing well before. Like they lost some series and everything, and then suddenly they just snapped out of it. And the World Cup, they were actually a dominant side.
and how many times do you see Australia getting out in the quarterfinal? I mean, like in the quarterfinals and
Yeah.
in the knockout stages. So Australia was almost invincible, kind of in that space for me, which kind of
Yeah.
turned.
Absolutely. Ayaz, in 2011, of course, the circumstances were very different from what the circumstances were in 1983. In 83, of course, we were underdogs, right? No one gave us a chance. But in 2011, going to the World Cup, a lot of people thought India were favorites, especially playing at home as well. So I'm pretty sure the victory must have been extremely sweet, given the fact that, we did live up to the expectations.
No, of course. I mean, you win a title is obviously very sweet. You're beating many good teams along the way. Some of, including Australia, defending champions, Pakistan. Always a big psychological battle which precedes and goes on while you play the match, and then beating a very very good Sri Lankan team. Let's not kind of underwhelm their contribution in the tournament. They were very very good. So I think overall this was a look. India were favorites to win the title, but that doesn't mean that India will necessarily win the title, or any team, if you're favorites, you will win the title. It didn't happen with the West Indies in 1983, as we know. And remember, subsequently from 1979, the West Indies haven't won at all. So there is a certain momentum that you need to maintain throughout the tournament, which makes you a champion side. If you start off well and you lose momentum along the way, then you might not end up winning, even if you're a damn good team on paper. I think the real contribution or the real achievement of the Indian team in that, apart from the title, was the way they sustained their form throughout the tournament in a very demanding environment. Yes, India's victory in 1983 came overseas in England, and we were the underdogs there. This was at home, but the pressure was, I think, far greater. I was in '83 in England. The pressure on the Indian team was nowhere compared to what this Indian team in 2011 faced, or the Indian team faces today. Because at that point in time in 1983, nobody, not a single soul, so there was no pressure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ayaz, I think your dog's also getting very excited, reminiscing about the 2011 World Cup final victory. Lovely. I can't believe we've already spoken for about 40 minutes. That's how free flowing the conversation has been. We'll take one question from the viewers. Debujit Deb is asking us, and I can quickly get everyone's thoughts before we conclude this session. Debujit Deb asking us, which was the turning point moment for the Indian team during the tournament, and when did you start visualizing India as the World Cup winner? Show me.
I think yes. Again, the Australia game. That was the moment when I started believing that yes, this will happen. Of course, there were a few games before that in which we played and we did well, but Australia game was kind of the seal for me that yes, things can happen from here.
Kunal?
Yeah, for me, there were two moments. One, like she said, against Australia. I mean, I remember Ravi Shastri or Sunil Gavaskar in the commentary box. They mentioned it's a test of who holds their nerves better, because Australia also could have won and India also could have won the way they were chasing. I think we had the last batting partnership over there, like UV and Reda, and that's how we held our nerves and we won it. And in the final as well, again after a collapse and when Dhoni actually stepped in after this one, Virat Kohli got out. At that moment, I remember looking at the screen. We needed something 200 odd from 200 balls, 200 runs from 200 balls, which is not difficult. Usually, a team would have gone for hitting and going for like trying to finish the match early. That's what we didn't do. We were calm. We were actually patient. We took the match till the end. Like if we wanted, we could have left 5-6 overs and won the game. That's what we didn't do, and that's how I mean, that shows how matured the Indian batting lineup was.
So Anubhav,
Ayaz?
yeah. So I'm surprised neither Shomi nor Kunal mentioned that Tendulkar getting 4 lives in the semi-final against Pakistan. That became the turning point. Turning point.
I'm a huge fan of Tendulkar, and I think that was one of his most sketchiest innings I have ever seen. I mean,
I'm just
live
kidding.
and he doesn't get a century.
I'm
I
just
mean,
kidding. That is
yeah.
one. But I really, I go with what both of them have said, with Kunal and Soumya have said, that really the turning point for me was beating Australia, because it kind of convinced the Indian team, the entire squad, that they can win the title. Pakistan, yes, always a tough opponent, and there's so much surround sound going around the India-Pakistan match that you start worrying as an Indian fan. But frankly, India had the measure of Pakistan man to man and collectively. So I think the big challenge was getting over that hump, against Australia. And once we did that, I felt fairly confident that India would be in the final, and whoever comes in the final, India would win.
And do you remember the last shot that
Fantastic.
Yuvraj played? That the boundary.
Yeah,
I think,
oh,
and then his celebration. I mean, like he just
beautiful.
went off and his celebration. I think I get goosebumps with that
I
visual
got a
till
goosebump
now.
while you said that.
Yeah, right. The best moment of the World Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. Even in the first
And
inning itself.
all the memes that followed as well, with Yuvraj on his knees, with the bat directly in the frame as well.
Yeah.
No, and let's
Exactly.
not forget Yuvraj's contribution in the entire tournament. Subsequently,
Exactly.
we know that he was going through the phase of cancer, which
Yeah.
could have, for a lesser person with lesser, capacity to bear pain and less self conviction that he must continue the job. I think somebody else would have kind of gone away from the tournament. I think he
Yeah.
actually overcame all his pain and all because he loved to play, and this was his big occasion, and he realized he was in form. I'll just give you a little reminder here. Maybe you'll know it. That he was the last guy to be selected for the squad, Yuvraj.
Yeah.
It was a toss up between him and Rohit Sharma. So the toss up was between two youngsters, Rohit and Virat. Virat got the nod, Rohit didn't, and they retained Yuvraj, who had been a little sketchy in his form before the World Cup, but he got in and became the player of the tour.
What also impressed me about Yuvraj was also his bowling. I mean, I think he almost bowled out his quota in most of the matches, and that kind of gave India that balance, in that side, that somebody who could just come in and bowl out. And he almost had like 13 wickets in the tournament.
Kevin Peterson used to call it Pai Chakra. So the Pai Chakra got a lot of wickets, yeah. I mean, look, Yuvraj's status in limited overs cricket is, outstanding. I think most people, if they have to draw up even a world 11, it's not that you can leave out Yuvraj so easily. In ball cricket, whether it's ODIs or T20s, because he was such apart from being a star and flamboyant player, amongst the biggest and the hardest hitters of the ball, terrific fielder in his prime, really outstanding, and then a very effective bowler. So, Stuart Broad probably still remembers 6 sixes. So, that's the kind of attacking stroke play that he had.
Yeah.
Anubhav, before we wind up, I have one question for Ayaz sir, if you would let me.
Go for it. Absolutely.
Sir, I just wanted to understand from you that Dhoni of 2011 and Virat of 2019, what do you see? I mean, how do you see this? How the kind of comparison and how Virat can grow from here?
So I don't see any comparison at all, because there's such contrasting personalities. Not just in their cricket, because Virat is top order batsman, Dhoni is lower middle order, and of course he's a wicket keeper. But also as personalities, otherwise, not just in their cricketing skills, but Dhoni is far more reticent, far more self-controlled. Virat is more in your face, very openly expressive about his desires, his ambitions, his passion, his sentiments. And both, I mean, all kinds of personalities have a place in sport. What I think I like about both of them, and even when they were playing together, and when captaincy changed hand, etc., there was never any situation which arose of who's the power center. Otherwise sometimes players are human beings, as it happens with so many aspects of life when we are working or even within families. Power centers shift, and there are issues that happen, but not in this case. So there was, I think, a lot of mutual admiration and also I think a lot of respect from Kohli for Dhoni. When Dhoni was eased himself out of Test cricket, or not eased himself out, actually suddenly dropped it. And the respect for each other's abilities, and I think that's the great thing for me. Where their captaincy is concerned, obviously it conforms to their respective personalities. Again, his passion overflows. Kohli's Dhoni was more astute in that sense, because he would read the other person's sentiments and not express his own. He wouldn't give away. He was like a closed fist, and Virat is pretty much like a thappad, open fist.
Yeah, nicely put forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we'll conclude proceedings on that note. I don't think we could, fit enough in this session. So we'll definitely need to have a part 2 with probably the same people giving me company, because it was an absolute pleasure with Ayaz Memon, the usual suspect, as always, and with the two debutants, Shomi and Kunal Samant. Thank you so much for joining us for this inaugural and special episode of Cricket Classics. I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys again. Of course, as I mentioned early on in the show, we have the CEO and the founder of the Bharat Army, Rakesh Patel, on Chatter Putter with Anubhav on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Indian Standard Time. So do watch out for that one. But coming up tomorrow is the Sports Week Tonight, which is a show in which I'll be hosting it, and I have Ayaz Memon as well, and we'll be talking about everything that happened in the world of sports, everything noteworthy, everything funny, everything goofy that took place in the world of sports in the week that went by. Appreciate your company in this very special episode of Cricket Classics. Look forward to your company for future sessions as well. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this one.
Tata. Thank you, Anubhav. Bye-bye.
Take care.